Dear viewers of the Tom Photo channel, after I had made YouTube reviews of the Helios 44-2 and Fuji XF 56, I started thinking about how incredibly different these seemingly similar prime lenses are and how interesting it would be to compare them. Let's put them in front of my Fujifilm X-T30 and go shooting, using exactly the same settings and scenes. Helios 44-2 is one of the best known and most mass-produced retro lenses in the world, known for its unique bubbly bokeh. It doesn't happen every time though, you really need to search for the right background. It has lots of soul and is ideal for art projects. Fuji XF 56 is a modern, ultra-sharp and precise marvel of engineering, the sharpest lens that I own. It is so accurate and sharp that it borders on being boring, but it makes me smile when I see what it can do. The Helios is a 58mm and the Fuji is a 56mm lens. Today I consider those focal lengths the same. Helios has the smallest f-stop of 2, but the Fuji goes all the way to 1.2. The f-stops in all side-by-side photos that I'm showing are the same. The film simulation was standard at 200% dynamic range, and the white balance was fixed at 4800 Kelvin. The camera could freely choose ISO and shutter speed. I did my best to focus on the same point, but manual focusing always involves a human factor. Before we start looking at the photos, let me show you the sharpness graphs of these lenses. They are very different. The Fuji graph shows that the lens is nice throughout the aperture range and even excels at f1.2. The Helios graph is very different. The more you close the aperture, the better the sharpness, and that's it. But now let's get to the photos. To start off, here are two RAW photos at f2.8 at the closest range that I can achieve here. The photos are very similar. Jump to f11 and we still have very similar results. The Helios photo is lighter, but as I'm using aperture priority mode in my tests, the camera shows a slightly longer shutter speed for Helios. I always did manual focusing for both lenses, so it may not always be the most accurate. Still, at wide open, the Fujinon appears much sharper. At f4, the Helios bokeh appears softer. At f8, the Helios is even softer, relatively speaking of course. At f2, the Helios photo is showing visible ghosting and lower contrast than the Fuji. This is regardless of the fact that the light was coming from almost behind me. We go to f11 and the Helios almost catches up with the Fuji in terms of contrast. Its rendering appears a bit cooler than the Fuji though. At f2, the Helios is noticeably softer, even when looking at this tiny photo on the screen. f5.6 improves things greatly, but the Fuji photo remains much better. This is a medium range shot. At f2, both lenses struggle with contrast, Fuji less so. When going to f5.6, the Helios is showing an area of low contrast in the upper left. Let's go to f11 and this becomes very prominent. Usually ghosting and contrast problems happen at small f-stop values, but here's something Helios doesn't like even at f11. I still don't want to give up the tree photos because I'm seeing weird things. At f2, Helios has a bluish shadow over the left part of the photo, and the sun does not shine on the lens. f5.6 fixes this and f11 improves things even better. Here I zoom in on the trunk and both lenses are sharp, even though the trunk is a bit off-center. Take note of how the Helios renders the trunk more blue and Fuji more red. The hammock at f2 is sharper with Fuji as expected. The Fuji does not have the bluish foggy layer on top of the image. f5.6 takes care of losing this aberration and f11 makes the photos very similar. When we look at the corner region of the same photo, Fuji is noticeably sharper even at f11. Let's go back and look at the corner at f2 as well, and as expected, there's no competition. The Helios photo is a pretty big mess here. With this flower photo, we are investigating close distance shots again. I'm zooming in on the flower that I focused on and the flowers are surprisingly similar. Sure, my manual focusing may have failed slightly for Fuji here. However, I used focus peaking and focus zoom function, so I couldn't have been terrible. At f4, the photos look really similar too, and at f16, they are very similar. Overall, it seems to me that the closer you are to your subject, the smaller the difference between these lenses, especially when your subject is in the middle of the frame. To prove this point, here's a distance shot. The Helios looks quite terrible at f2, to be honest. The landscape sits under a blue and foggy layer. f4 improves things enormously, although the corner sharpness is nothing to write home about for Helios. Let's jump all the way to f16. The Fuji is still winning in the contrast department and still visibly better in the corner. Of course, the f16 is already significantly flirting with diffraction. At f2, the wall is more blue with the Helios. The center sharpness differences are easy to see. At f11, the center sharpness of Fuji is still winning, but not by a landslide anymore. Corners, of course, look more in Fuji's favor. I'm showing you this pile of wood because in this evening light, Helios produces much more blue. When we look at the center sharpness at f2, you see the blue fog over the Helios photo. At f4, the fog is disappearing. We haven't looked at the corner sharpness at this close to medium range photography distance yet, so here it is. Fuji is doing much better as expected. For completeness sake, here's the same at f8, and Helios has made up for the lost sharpness to a degree. Let's look at another close range photo, a fly agaric. See how at f2 the Helios problems are not apparent. The blue tint is not too bad and the photo is pleasing. Of course, when you zoom in, the Fuji photo is sharper. Let's jump to f8, and I must say I like both photos equally well. Even the sharpness in the middle is quite similar. At f2, the Helios photo is almost ruined. Just look at the Fuji shine here, but all it takes is going to f2.8 to really make the Helios work quite alright again. At f5.6, I have very little to complain about, and f11 fixes most issues entirely. These city park hammocks are quite blued out at f2 for Helios, but let's look at the bokeh. The Fuji looks smoother, and the Helios shows more defined circles in the leaves part. At f4, this difference is almost gone. For some reason, the camera chose a much shorter shutter speed for Helios. At f8, I like both photos equally well. This is a closer range photo again, and Helios is surprising by not casting the blue layer over the image, a typical behavior with more distant shots at f2. At f2.8 and above, the photo is very nice indeed. Helios can certainly surprise. I did my comparison in nature and on the street here. My conclusions could be different for portrait photography because with manual focusing and especially with the M42 screw mount, it is really hard to focus precisely on the eye. My comparison of these lenses first of all confirms that if high image quality is required and no surprises are tolerated, the Fujinon XF 56 will win in all categories. It is sharp, precise, and offers great contrast. A painfully amazing lens, in fact. However, the Helios 44-2 certainly had its moments. Sure, it is full of surprises and therefore not dependable in every situation, but it can shine. At higher f-stops, it gets closer to the Fuji, and in a few instances, I could not choose which lens I liked more. We didn't explore its famous swirly bokeh in this video. I'll address this in a future video. The Helios is soft wide open, especially in the corners, and it has this low contrast bluish tint problem at f2. Ghosting can be a problem in select conditions. Helios' photos have a cooler tint to them, while Fuji photos appear warmer. All these aspects become more prominent when photographing distant objects. For close-up images, you don't notice it very much, or it even helps to isolate the subject that sits in the middle of the frame. Those aspects that some could call flaws of the lens actually become desired when making films, especially the artsy ones. And when I say that Helios is better for videos than photography, and especially when filming close range, I really mean it. It is not just a lens that can manage video. It could easily be one of the best lenses for your purpose. The more I film with it, the more I like it. I know that some of the Helios examples that I showed you were actually representatives of more difficult situations. In most scenarios, Helios can really do quite well. I like my Helios more than I may have made it sound in this video. I think it is a great value for your money. The superfine Fujinon will win in normal situations, but do you always want to be in normal situations with your photography? The Helios has several advantages over expensive modern lenses. Very importantly, its focusing distance is much smaller than that of the Fuji 56. Additionally, it is cheap, it is small, it has character, and it does what people often want to do in their artsy videos. It's an absolutely amazing short-range artsy video lens, and this is my main take-home message for you today. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my other videos related to this one in the text box down below. Thanks so much for your time, and also for subscribing and leaving a like if you feel like doing it. Goodbye.